Hi, welcome back to this week's podcast.
Yeah.
We're going to go a little out of our comfort zone actually this week. Why don't you tell me what we're going to do, what we're going to talk about?
Well, for some reason, just things started popping into my head over things that have happened, questionable things maybe over my entire life that have happened from being a female, a woman, and maybe, definitely not confronting it, telling anybody about it, doing something about it. And then it hit me because we talked about how things have changed from then and now. And I think that that's just, I wasn't equipped.
Right.
Nobody had taught me what was acceptable or not, well, what you should handle or take as a woman.
Right.
So and then now how we have much more access to tell someone or to tell HR or go to somebody, and it's okay that this is not acceptable unless
Right.
and
some things actually were acceptable.
Yes.
People accepted that if they happened now would not be accepted.
That's an excellent point. And I think that's where a lot of it is. I mean, today it wouldn't be accepted, but at the time it was just like,
right.
just part of life. So, yeah. So the first thing I remember that happened to me was when I was working at your family business, The Loft. And I would do some reason, I'd walk down to the gas station. It was on Main Street in Grand Prairie.
Right.
And I'd walk from the loft and I'd go down to the gas station. And I don't know what I was doing. Maybe I was buying us Cokes or something.
I think that's
I have no idea. So, and one time I went down there, and I don't know if it was the owner of the gas station or somebody that worked there or what, but it was a much older man. And he actually took me by my wrist and pushed me up against the wall. And in my mind, I was 15 at the time.
Yeah,
I was like, and I don't even remember really what he was saying or anything, but I do know that, number one, I was scared to death because in my mind I was thinking, I did know about rape. Like, is this what happens? Is that what's going to happen? And then, and I don't remember, like I say, what he said or did. And then it was over, and I went back. And
is that all he did?
That was all he did. He was saying something, and he was pushing me up, and he had my hands, his hands around my wrists and my arms pinned back.
Wow.
He's a grown-ass man.
Yeah.
I'm a 15-year-old girl. What are you doing? So I didn't tell you, did I?
No, I'm actually been shocked, and I feel terrible. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
But that happened. I was scared. I was embarrassed. I've never told anybody.
Wow.
That was the very first thing that happened.
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
But I mean, I didn't even know who would I tell, and what he didn't do anything. I didn't know. I did not know.
Right. You wouldn't. None of us really.
Yeah. And so there have been experiences like that through my life, and it's not funny, haha.
Right.
But it's interesting how you put things like that out of your mind. And sometimes you think, when we hear these stories of women of like, why didn't you come forward and say that, or
why
did you wait that many years? Why did you wait that years? Well, I'm telling you right now, in some of these instances that I had forgotten, probably, unless it flashed up on the news and said, John Doe did this, and I would be like, oh my gosh, I remember that happened to me, or I remember being in a situation like that. So I don't ever want to be judgmental towards any woman.
No.
And nobody has a right to judge when or if, and how you handle that situation.
That's true.
Yeah.
The first thing I remember was I worked for a company, and I was in the international shipping department, which required a lot of paperwork and documents because we were shipping overseas. I was probably I would say I was probably in my 20s, and we would have to work late because every document had to be absolutely perfect and checked and rechecked
Sure.
by someone in management. And I had taken my documents and up to have them checked, and I think it was the second time I had taken them up there, and because I had to make changes, and there was actually another lady in the room with me, and I went to hand the documents to the gentleman to check because he had to initial everything, and he made some kind of comment, about them. Are they going to be right this time or something kind of
Some
ugly?
rude, snide
And I
comment.
just went to take the document back
Mm-hmm.
and to look at something on it,
Mm-hmm.
and he slapped my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean a little
Tap.
tap it or
Like,
the
hey, don't do that. Yeah.
accidentally slapping your hand. I mean, it was a big all out slap that made noise. And I
Oh,
remember being so startled. Of course, first thing I did when I walked out of the office was I started sobbing.
of
I
course.
was crying because I was just in the state of shock. But I never took it I never did anything or took it any further, nor
Wow.
did the lady that was in there with me say anything about it.
And I guess what you just didn't. It's just something that happened to you, and you kept it to yourself, and it's
Yeah,
just
but
part
it
of.
always, but it, like I said, that was, what, over 50
Yeah.
years ago, and I'm like, and it still, it to this day bothers me now because often I've thought,
Yeah.
if that would happen now
Yeah.
in today's
Yeah.
world, the first thing I would do would be walk out of there and call the
Yeah.
police and report that he had
An assault.
basically,
Yeah.
it was this, because it was,
Yeah.
and that he had,
Wow.
physically hit
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's awful.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to think. Okay, I kind of had to write them down because number one, I was finding out there were so many
Right.
instances. Um, but anyway, so the next one, and this has kind of just been ongoing, I guess, all through my life. But I remember being a freshman in college, and in my English, had an English professor, and he was just a little old man, right? I mean, an
Right.
English professor. And I remember one day he asked me to stay after class, and I did, of course. And he took his wallet and he took out all this cash and he spread it out over his desk. And I don't remember how much it was, but he was like, I know how hard it is to be a young student in school and how you probably need some cash. You need to, you probably need some money. And I guess my defense mechanism was always to play dumb,
Right.
like I don't, oh no, I'm fine,
Right.
and everything like
I
that.
totally get it.
And what was he trying to do or say? I don't know, but looking back on it, I think he wanted me to say, yeah, I need some money. And him saying, well, let me
Right.
tell you how you can make some money.
Right.
So there you are as an English professor in school, So,
Wow.
and there again, I never told anybody about that either.
Well, that's true. I'm in sales, and it's in a man's industry.
Mm-hmm.
There's only, I don't, in the wholesale part of it, there's never been that many women
Yeah,
in
right.
sales, and it was a man's world, and that was really tough, and there were some situations that came up that, probably I should have reported to
Mm-hmm.
the HR department,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't want to, didn't want to. I was embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know how to tell somebody, and then in your mind you're thinking, well, am I
imagining
am
that?
I which I didn't imagine.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember, someone from one of our manufacturing is coming in, and we took a customer to lunch, and on the taking him back to his hotel, he kind of started wanting to hold my hand. Then he asked if we wanted to go for a drink on the way home, and I said, sure, I guess.
Which there's a lot of drinking in
Because
sales, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and I didn't know.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Anyway, and he kind of made a pass, and which I just basically ignored.
Yeah.
And I mean,
That's how we handled it.
He insinuated.
Yeah.
And I just totally ignored it.
Yeah.
Dropped him off like I was supposed to.
Yeah.
And I know the next morning when I picked him up to take him back to the airport, he even looked at me and says, and I guess he was embarrassed and realized, and he said, I didn't know if you'd actually pick me up or if I was going to need to get another
So he
ride.
knew.
So
He
he
had crossed,
obviously
he had crossed the line.
knew that he had,
Yeah,
yeah, that
yeah,
he had
yeah,
crossed that he had crossed the line.
yeah,
And again, I didn't say anything,
yeah,
and I just said, "Oh, I'm good." I just
yeah,
let on. I mean, like as if I just blocked it out of my
yeah.
mind, and
You do. It's just part of it.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know right out of high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so I walked into Arlington. This is another thing that's changed. You know, I walked into Arlington Memorial Hospital and said, I want a job. And they said, oh, okay, you want to work in cardiology? You know, and it's like, okay, you know, that, I mean, how crazy. You just walk in and ask
Oh
for a job
wow!
and you could get a job. Anyway, so I worked in that department, and there was always one doctor that I thought was so nice and everything. But every time he saw me, it was like, "Oh, come give me a hug," you know, "How you doing?" You know, and I there again, I didn't think much about it except, "Oh, here's this nice doctor, isn't he being nice to me and everything?" And there was an older woman, very sweet woman. She was probably I was 18, so she was probably, I think she was maybe 50 or something, really nice older lady. And one day she took me aside and she goes, you need to stop that. You're just giving him a free fill. You need to stop that. And I had never, it had never even entered my
Thought
head,
about it.
never even thought about it. But I remember her to this day. And thank goodness, you know, she at least planted that seed in my head that, hey, this
Exactly.
is not
Did
really
you
appropriate.
the next time? Was that the last time?
I don't even remember now,
don't
but
remember how
I think
avoiding?
I started staying,
Just
staying away,
right,
and not doing that because I mean that creeps you out, right?
right.
Yeah, for sure. So that was one, and then okay, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
was no, I was just going to say, it starts going back because and how things really change, and you look then
Mm-hmm.
and how things are now,
Yeah.
and that's just kind of like I was in my first marriage. I was abused both physically and mentally,
Wow.
and
Really?
yeah,
Physically?
yeah, and you get to the point where you almost, because everybody would say, "Why would you do it?" And my parents, I think, we filed for divorce twice. They paid, and it just, and I would
And you
go,
would go back?
and I'd get suckered back
Yeah.
into going back, and
Wow.
because I had the hopes and dreams of gonna have a a
Yeah.
family, have kids, the little
Sure.
white picket fence, the
Sure.
perfect little
Sure.
husband, which that wasn't gonna
Sure.
happen,
Yeah.
and always going to change. It was, the
Mm-hmm.
first time's going to be the last
Uh-huh.
time, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
until you get to the point your self esteem is so bad that you almost feel like you deserve it. Like I'm a
Wow.
terrible person. I've done something.
Right.
You make excuses.
It's all your
I've done
fault.
something to escalate
Right.
this. Should be a should have done this different. I should have done that differently to try to control the situation, and I didn't.
Wow.
And it escalated to the point at one time that my elder son was a baby, and I had actually bought and put it on a charge card. My sister had her daughter was a preemie, this little giraffe, whenever it played music and the head went around, and he was so mad at me that he literally took my head and banged it against the thing on the door, on the side of the door. And I went and I did press
Oh,
charges,
good.
but they didn't do any much back then. Because then
No.
I think the next day, I think I didn't go back, but
Uh-huh.
but I did drop the charge. But I remember sitting at the police station, literally doing like this, and
Oh my
my hair was coming out,
gosh.
and my dad, bless my dad's sweetheart, he owned a clothing factory at the time, and my mother picked me up, and they walked into the where everybody was working on their sewing machines and everything, and my dad just made an announcement, and he just said, "I tell you what, I've got a price on his head. I'll pay for any arm or any leg."
Are you? Wow.
And he said, "I'm not kidding." And
Wow.
I just said, of course, I'm like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
Dad." And
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was so upset. And the next thing during this time too, he did that when he saw me. Then um, he had kept my baby and wouldn't let me have him.
Oh no.
But and then so the next day he came up to my work, my ex-husband, and he had him there and basically trying to figure out, trying to do the apologetic
Yeah.
thing. And I called my dad and I said, Dad, he brought me,
Right.
Adam, and will y'all come and get him? I had a van at the time, and I was in this office working, and my dad again walked right into the office where Ron was at,
Yeah.
and Ron said something about, well, he wasn't going to let him have him, and my dad didn't even say one word to him. My dad just looked at me, and he said, "Do you want him? If you want him, I'll shoot the son of a bitch." And I got a gun in the car to do it.
Oh my gosh.
And I am
Your
like,
dad.
and I told them both. My first
Yeah.
response was, "You both get out of here.
Yeah.
This is where I work.
Yeah.
Just please, just leave,
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
of you." And I asked my dad later, and Ron, and he was smart enough. He did follow my parents back to my dad's work,
Yeah.
to the clothing factory, and he said, "You're right,
Yeah.
Fred.
Yeah.
I apologize. He needs to be here. Here
Yeah.
he is."
Okay.
And I asked my dad. In fact, we talked about it for years later, and I said, "Dad, what would you?" I said, What would you have done
Yeah.
if I had said yes?"
Yeah.
He said, "I would have got him."
Wow.
And he said, "This one thing you learn in life is you don't commit to something."
Oh.
You don't say something
Yeah.
unless you're willing to do the consequences.
Wow, I admire
and you
that.
think about it,
Yeah.
you know the consequences.
Yeah. Wow.
So don't ever he said, and that applies to everything in life. So before you confront someone,
Yeah.
before you make a decision about
Yeah.
your job,
Yeah.
before you whatever you do, you think about it. You think about the worst scenario. You think about because it may turn out, because when you say something, people have to know.
Yeah.
That's you mean business.
Wow, but your dad was willing to take those consequences.
Yeah, he did. In fact,
Wow.
he was so strong at it that he was actually vice president at one point when he was younger of a company, and he had promised the employees had gotten in touch with management and promised these employees some extra benefits and stuff. And when it finally came right down to it, the owners changed their mind and said no.
Oh.
And my dad made the decision. He did a great job, and said, "Okay, well, if you're not going to do it, I gave my word.
Wow.
I'm out of here."
Yeah.
And he quit a high paying job.
Well, I admire that.
Yeah, he was definitely a man of his word. And
Yeah.
you definitely knew when he
Yeah.
said something. That's what he meant.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I have this story. In some of these we were talking about. I was I was young and everything, but
Right.
this one was I was late 40s, maybe 50 when this happened, and that's how recent it is that I still didn't say or thinking about it really. My job, I was in a meeting in a conference room, and there were probably about 8 of us. I was the only female in there, and my manager, who I admired, he taught me so much. He was younger, but he taught me so much, and we had a good relationship and everything like that. And we were waiting for the meeting to start, where it was going to be on a conference call. So physically there's like 8 of us in there. I'm the only woman, and he starts talking in front of everybody. Vicki, Victoria, when you run, are you running in a tight Under Armour, outfit and shirt and all this kind of stuff, and was kind of going on and on. And there again, I was like mortified inside, but I'm like just kind of playing dumb,
Right.
trying to get through
Right.
this situation.
Right.
So, and then the meeting starts. We had the meeting's over. One of the gentlemen that was in that meeting afterwards came up to me and apologized. He said, "I am so sorry that he said those things and put you in that situation, and that was inappropriate, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Well, thank you very much." Fine and dandy, right? Well, I don't know how long it was, maybe 6 months, 9 months, a year later, there's a company happy hour, dinner happy hour, and stuff like that. And it kind of goes on through kind of late in the morning, probably like 1 o'clock, midnight, 1 o'clock. And so this same man that had apologized to me, we'll call him John Doe too.
Right.
When I got ready to leave, he said, I'll walk you to your car. We were downtown Fort Worth, so it was going to be several blocks to get to the parking garage to get to my car.
Right.
He said, no, I was like, no. And he says, no, I insist. It's, 1 o'clock in the morning. Let me walk you to your car. Well, we get to my car. He pushes me up against my car and starts kissing me. This gentleman is maybe 30. So we're already talking about somebody that's 20 years younger than me. And he's like, I've always had a crush on you and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. And there again, I just, pushed him off, laughed about it, got in my car and went home. Never told anybody, but can you imagine? So this was in the 2000s.
Wow.
So I definitely should have, on both of those instances, gone to HR
Right.
or something.
Right. I hope that, like I said, my granddaughter, and I hope Shelby even too, is, strong enough and realize that they would correct the mistakes and that we've made.
Well, that's a good point. A couple things I would say about that, and what would our 69, 70-year-old self say to that younger Connie and Vicki? And my first thing is, thank goodness, whether it's by the grace of God or whatever, I always seem to have an internal ick factor.
Right.
Did you have that too?
Yes.
Just some people, especially at a really young age, you just don't want to be around.
Right, exactly.
You certainly don't ever want to be around them alone, whether it's family or family friend or whatever. So always listen to that inside your gut feeling. That's number one. And then secondly, wow, I think I would definitely tell myself none of that. And we barely touched on it. There's so many more instances, and I know you had it too. But that is not okay. Not one of those things is okay. And they had no right to speak to you like that, physically touch you.
No.
Kiss you.
Right.
Try to get into your hotel room,
Right.
whatever it is. They had no right to do that. And you have the right to speak up and do something about that.
Right. I can, on a lighter note, let me just tell if it's a wrong story, but it is funny because then I had learned stuff.
Sorry, our camera's tilting. As I lean into you.
Yeah, maybe we need to
pause it.
Maybe we need to pause it and straighten that out a little bit.
Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties, but we're back.
Just a little bit. We're wrapping things up anyway.
Yeah.
So we're going to close with a little bit of a lighter story. It's basically the same nature of being pretty naive and not knowing how to handle things.
Yeah.
That unexpectedly.
Appropriately.
Right. And so my story is going to be that when I was in sales, I was working in Houston. Had an appointment with a customer. So I pulled up to their office building, which was a pretty good size office building. And I'm getting my paperwork and everything together to go in and call on this company. And this big work kind of van pulls up right beside me.
Okay.
And I didn't really think too much about it, but then I kind of just glanced in my rearview mirror, and about the time I glanced to my rearview mirror, I noticed this gentleman was working kind of in the back of the van and was walking right between the car and his work van and exposing himself.
That's no gentleman.
No, it wasn't.
Oh my gosh!
So,
what did you do?
Well, I drove around the block. I drove around the block 5 times.
Waiting for him to leave?
Waiting for him to leave, yes. Waiting for him to...
pants back on?
Well, whatever he had to do. Anyway, and so finally, after the 8th or 9th trip around, anyway, he left.
Okay.
And I didn't know, I was kind of so bewildered. You sit there and you're thinking, did I really just see that?
Right.
Did that really just happen to me?
Oh my goodness.
And so I called my boss, and he had one of the other ladies that worked in the office was in his office. They were both there, and I I told him what happened. I said, "You're not going to believe what just happened to me." And I said, I just, and I explained to him what happened. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, what are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know. I know I need protection." Then I paused him and I said, "Should I go with a gun or maybe a rubber?"
Oh no.
I just, that's because, like you said, that's my mech.
That's how you handle stress.
That's how I handle stress.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
If something's stressful,
Humor.
I want to make a joke out of
Yeah.
it or make you right. But I mean, it really did, affect me.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
And we're laughing at it, but I mean that's a serious thing.
It was really,
yeah.
it was really. But I'll tell you what, it was a lesson learned. I made sure every time when I pulled up anywhere, my doors were locked.
Yes, ma'am.
And it made me much more aware.
Yes, ma'am.
Of my surroundings.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
I agree. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we're just going to wrap it up on that.
Yep.
And like us, subscribe as usual, and we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you.